This is a Russian icon of Luke, done in 1600 AD. Every illustration in this particular, we did a collage in this too. All of these are historical illustrations. Every illustration. The records are full of historical illustrations. So what we do is we take these records and we use them, the illustrations in them, to show us ourselves. Right? When you have an image of Washington crossing Delaware, it's not because somebody took a camera and snapped Washington crossing Delaware. It's because a painter painted a historical illustration. Okay, and black history is full of illustrations. So, one more point, you know, going back to how we organize stuff. We try to organize so it doesn't fall off the table. Okay. There's so much material that's out there. There's so much material out there that it is not possible to do an A to Z presentation. And I refuse to do an A to Z presentation. Black history, 5 minutes. You know, I mean, that's the kind of thing that leads to polemic. And polemics, as far as I'm concerned, don't work. Our people need the meat, man. We don't need the shell, we don't need the crumbs, we don't need the outline of the bread, we need the whole thing. So, the way I provision, the way I organize presentations, is that I don't do everything in one presentation. The themes are important, and episodes are important. So our approach is either thematic or episodal. You will hear me say today, probably in response to some questions, that's another episode. See, these pictures aren't just pretty pictures. They are reflections of historical events, real history. Okay, so rather than talk about the generality about the picture, we like to look at the real specific reference. And those are themes, those are rather episodes. Later on in the presentation, there will be many questions, I'm sure, that will come up. When you see the real nature of the part of Africa that we ourselves are from, the question will automatically rise, how was this place possibly colonized? You know, it certainly wasn't the great white hunter coming up and pop, pop, pop. And they say, whoa, sick, firing lightning, let's get the hell out of our country. It doesn't work that stupid. Are we stupid? No. We are not a stupid people. If you believe that you're intelligent, would you please raise your hand? Quickly. Okay. Yeah, I forgot to raise my hand. Did I cut you? Okay. We are an intelligent people, not just because we want to be, but our people have, there's something called genetic memory, right? And our people have knowledges that are part of our orientation, our psycho-spiritual makeup. That's part of who we are. And we are killing this and letting our young people kill it in themselves because we say, well, you know, 2 slave trades came in Africa, and next thing you know, everybody's gone except the guys in the village going, So, let's see, okay. Anyway, we're going to begin now, and I hope that that's enough background to the subject, the urban heritage of West Africa. Even the maps and things that we show are historical maps, and the images that we show of the earth are scientifically designed images or photographs. So you'll see, I pray, and please, if you have a question, if something just doesn't click, say, hey, I don't get it, you can say, I don't get it. My name is Dawud. Okay, I respond, like when you say Dawud, I say, hey, somebody's calling me. Okay? So if you have those kind of questions, I would be more than happy to answer them if possible, or share ideas with you. And there will be many questions that come up, because I've done this particular presentation. You know, we do presentations in a lot of subjects. The black presence in the lands of the Bible, 100,000 horsemen. We do a presentation called White Armies, Black Troops, or How Africa Was Colonized. Most of us don't know that most of the troops that colonized Africa were black. Most of the French army was black. Most of the German army, the Italian army, the British army were black. Do you think that in the next hour we can cover both the urban heritage, the black presence in lands of the Bible, and that subject? No. That's a big subject. But I contend that the polemic that we're exposed to prevents us. And I hope that this presentation opens a couple of doors, or a couple of windows, or turns a couple of switches on in your mind. Who we are as a people that can spark more positive things in all of our families and all of our communities. Okay, so we can start now. If we can hit the lights. Okay. Okay, very good. We won't be able to see that with this light on. You don't have to worry about shooting me. The pictures are more important than I am anyway. Okay. I'll signal you like that, okay? You see? Okay, when we start to talk about Africa, we all know that it's a huge place, right? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. I thought my ears were frozen. Okay, but how huge is it? This is a photograph of Earth. It's not a drawing. It's not an artist's rendition. It's a photograph taken with a camera with a 70-millimeter lens. You can take a 70-millimeter lens and take a portrait of anybody in this room. This is a photograph of Earth from NASA, one of the Apollo missions, I believe Apollo 17. And this is considered the very best photograph of Earth. Look at Africa in this illustration. This photograph was taken from 80,000 kilometers away from the Earth. 80,000! That's like if you took a wire, wrapped it around the entire circumference of the Earth, what is that, about 11 times? And stretched it out. This is how big Africa would appear on the surface of the Earth. The size of Africa, it's going to surprise you. Because I'm going to tell you, when you start realizing that it is not a small place, I mean, you know, it's one thing to intellectually conceive, yes, Africa's, what is it, 11.5 million square miles. Hey, what does that mean? It means that it's so big that you can have all kinds of stuff going on there at the same time. That's what it means. Next, please. Great. This is a composite map done from satellite technologies from the European Space Administration, ESA, USA. And the importance of this, I thought, was that when you look at how the world looks from satellites, from space, West Africa is considerably larger than what we see on the maps. Do you all know the difference between the Peters projection and the Mercator maps? Okay. Well, this is neither. This is a satellite composite. And you see how the Peters projection is much closer to that, but the satellite composite shows the great landmass of West Africa. West Africa by itself, from Lake Chad right here to Senegal, is 5/6 the size of the continental United States. In other words, if you took California off the map, every other state would fit into West Africa. Every other state, and I'm not talking about Alaska and Hawaii, they're too cold anyway. Okay, they're too hot. Next please. Okay, great. Okay, this is a map of the drainage systems in West Africa. Most of us have this image of Africa as being this big jungle. I wonder why. Yeah, we're programmed. We're programmed, but remember, we're free people and we have our own minds. This West Africa, this huge area, again, if this is Washington, D.C., this is San Diego. Okay, I've got a map of Africa at home that's as big as this wall. It's as big as this. And it's all of Africa. And on the scale, 1 inch equals 150 miles. 150 miles. So if you look at some of the drainage here, you see that it's a well-watered place. Sheikh Anta Diop, for example, points out that the hydroelectric potential of West Africa is the highest in the world. Okay, next please. As opposed to the image that we have of Africa as being heavily forested, West Africa is composed rather of essentially flatlands. The only forests are in the blue here, and the mango swamps are here. You see this? Okay, that's the heavy forest. After that, all the rest, 75% of West Africa is flatlands and grasslands. Now here's a place roughly the size of the United States that's got 75% of it essentially flatlands, potentially agricultural lands. I do recognize that we're the descendants of the Egyptians. Okay, just keep that in the back of your mind. We're going to come back to that, okay? Okay, next please. People dominate West Africa. Now, if you took that stretch of savanna, the flatlands, and you stretch it, it would stretch all the way across Africa. And on this side, you'd have the Serengeti Plains, where you have the great flatlands and the wildebeest and elephants and all these things running free, right? That's not West Africa. That's in East Africa. West Africa is dominated by people. I lived in West Africa for 5 years, and I traveled a whole lot. I traveled to Dogon country in Mali, to Abidjan, to Gorée Islands and the different coastal places. My oldest daughter was born in Ghana. I delivered her myself in Medina, in Ghana. I didn't see no animals except in the zoo. West Africa is dominated by people. Here's an interesting statistic. How many people? You'll find, brothers and sisters, that, if I'm not mistaken, this is all common sense stuff. This is logic. Okay, and I pray that you see that, at least I believe that it's true. The United States has 240 million people, right? Mm-hmm. West Africa is almost as large as the United States. How many people does West Africa have? West Africa has about 200 million people. Nigeria alone has about 120 million people. Don't look at the old stats, because, just find the real stats, like the United Nations stats and the new Nigerian census that was done a couple years back. About 120 million people in Nigeria alone. When you add Ghana, Senegal, Mali doesn't have a whole lot of people. Ivory Coast certainly does. Togo has a lot of people. This photograph is one that I took in Sierra Leone. Small place. Little tiny place. Not really little tiny, obviously. But by the African standards, this is not certainly one of the big cities of West Africa. But people dominate West Africa. Not animals, not jungles, but people. And people have dominated the lands of West Africa for well over 1,000 years. Next, please. The same is true. Okay, now check this out. If there are 200 million people in West Africa today, and 100 million or so were taken out, i.e. us, a picture begins to emerge of a historical West Africa full of people. This is an illustration from a city in Ivory Coast called Kong, K-O-N-G. Most of the young people, when I show them pictures from Kong, I say, what do you think of when you think of Kong in Africa? Any ideas? King Kong. King Kong. You know, I wouldn't doubt that someone looked at a 19th century map and said, oh, let's call the monster Kong. Nobody will know. This is the real Kong. 1886, the arrival of the first European French Lieutenant Colonel Bonager. He's being escorted into town on an ox. And he's becoming the site of a lot of curiosity. Remember the year, okay? I didn't say 1500, did I? I said 1886. Little more than 100 years ago. Well after the slave trade. Well after the period of chattel slavery in American history. We can show you the books that these are in. Okay, so West Africa is not only dominated by people, it historically was a very serious population area, well-populated area. Serious is like China is historically. Next, please. This is a wonderful example. Here you have a city. Anybody disagree? The city? You can see the differentiation in the large and small buildings, the organized rows of streets. This city is so small by African standards that I challenge you to find it on a map. It's a city called Gundam, G-O-U-N-D-A-M. It's on the Niger River. It's a little south and west of Timbuktu, maybe 50, 60 miles. It's so small that most of us, unless you know, there's some maps that are shown, but it won't appear on most maps. But look at it. It's bigger than anybody, than anything that anybody in the Pepsi-Cola company would ever put out. You see what I'm saying? They are minimalizing us. They are trying to marginalize us. They're trying to say, you guys are small. From the air, Gundam looks like this. But from the ground, this is Gundam. Every building part of a 1,000-year-old urban tradition in Africa, West Africa, where we are from. This is a photograph done in 1975 and I obtained this, I didn't take this myself. I obtained this from the Smithsonian Museum of African Art, the Elliot Elasafon slide archives, who was a Life magazine photographer. Spent 17 to 20 years, taking photographs of different parts of Africa. Every part of this, every part, now flip it back, will you? From the air. You see what I'm saying? A clearly urban tradition. In an example that's so small we don't even know, you can't find it on the map. And from the ground, if you can forward it, it looks just like this. Next, please. People dominate West Africa. There are many types of people in West Africa. In fact, it is such a mind, but I know there are people here from West Africa or who travel to West Africa. Okay, would you agree that you see your cousins over there? It's no joke. Our cousins are there. These people are our cousins. You see, it's not like we left and there was nothing there again. It's like our cousins are still there. Okay, and in the piece that we did on the urban heritage of West Africa, I'll see if I can put this up here, you might see it. I did this little collage. I love collages, right? And I did this little collage of some of the peoples of West Africa. Can you see that? Yes. And you'll find your own relatives in this illustration. This is an illustration from 1887 of a Masi trader in the area of Kong. Now, Masi wasn't really in the area of Kong. We're going to get into that in detail. Because this is not just, again, it's not just about showing you pictures. Okay, it's about applying the historical context to the illustrations. They are out of historical documents. They are historical illustrations. So therefore, they have a context. And I want to try to share as much as I can that context with you today. This is a Masi trader in the area of Kong. We saw one illustration of Kong already. But this particular trader is not from Kong. He's from Masi. And I think we'll get to some maps where you can see the difference in distance where Masi is from Kong. Masi is in Burkina Faso, and Kong is in the Ivory Coast. They are roughly about 400 miles apart. And he's just, doing his business. I like his shoes. Next, please. Here you have a different group of Sanufo people, again in the area of Kong. And believe me, you'll see many different types of images. They're not all going to be from the area of Kong in 1886. Okay, I mean, there are hundreds of books and there are thousands of illustrations that we draw from. And this particular presentation is just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, this is a brother here who's weighing gold. And you see the fascination on the faces of this historical illustration from the year 1886. And you also see the type of clothing. You have a place that's the size of America with as many people. Not everybody's going to live in villages, and wait for the Pepsi man to tell them to jump up and down. Next, please. In fact, cities and urban centers dominated. There's a book, I'll show it to you. It's called African Cities and Towns. It's a little book, Before the European Conquest, by Richard Hill. Okay. And one of the things that he says in here that I quoted was that, let's see, should I pull it from this one or is something wrong? Well, anyway, it says that although it's true that millions of Africans lived and have continued to live in small villages and hamlets, great cities existed as well. And all of the Africans were affected by the great cities. What we're going to see is that not only great cities, but many types of cities and many towns also are part of the urban heritage of West Africa. It is not possible to have a land with that many people, the size of the United States, that's a flat land. It's not possible to have that land without having a lot of cities. And let's see. It cannot be denied, says Richard Hull, that most sub-Saharicans lived and indeed continue to live in small villages and hamlets. Yet magnificent towns and cities flourished as well, and only a minority of Africans were completely unaffected by them. Okay, so they're talking about, we're gonna go into that in more detail than he did. Okay, we can go back because we're still talking about people. There's a variety of people in West Africa. You know what blew my mind? I went over to West Africa. Here I am, not the darkest brother in the room. You understand? Doesn't bother me. But that's a fact. It's a statement of fact, right? Okay, now I thought, based on the mindset that I had been polluted. Hey, man, white man, or whatever, that's had his hands on the system. You know, however, I found out something which did blow my mind. And that is that there are different kinds of Africans. Not all Africans look alike. There's a stereotype that is projected to us about what Africans look like. You can go to a room in Nigeria and see every doggone face in this room. You can go to a meeting in Sierra Leone and see the same thing. Every single face, every feature. You know, Egypt. I'm going to back up for a second because I know you guys, you're going to let me jump around, right? Okay. Egypt. The word Africa is traced by two sources. The first English source that took the word Africa and examined the Kemetic etymological origins of the word was Gerald Massey, who in Book of the Beginnings took the word Afrika and broke it down into Af, Rui, and Ka. You all know what Ka means, right? Right. No. Okay. Ka is soul. Ka is the soul. Af means of the, or and you know how it goes. There's a lot of different ways it can be twisted and still come out with the same meaning. And Rui, R-U-I, is a term that, according to Gerald Massey and later picked up and expanded somewhat by Ivan Van Sertima, Rui refers to the Ruti, R-U-T-I. The Ruti are the original Egyptians. The Egyptians, the Kemites, called the Ruti the original race. The Ruti was not black. The Ruti was brown. Much like the Messiah of kings. This is getting kind of heavy. Okay, it is getting kind of heavy. My point being this, that as opposed to taking in other words, if there's a normal curve of African people, you see what I'm saying? And their geological factors, what do you call it, geophysical factors that impact physiognomy and facial, changes. Okay.
Yeah, but I don't get it as you said it should say, right? Now, from what I've read that there's like 3 different